want to begin by giving a shout out to my non-binary, gender fluid, and gender non-conforming siblings who honor us with your presence and can get lost in conversations on manhood and womanhood. I want to acknowledge you and your importance today as well. So, what does it mean to be a man? It sounds like a simple question, but when you really sit with it, it carries a lot of assumptions. Many of the traits people list as what makes you a man also apply to a woman and non-binary people as well. So what are we really asking when we ask, what does it mean to be a man? To me, being a man is the way a person who identifies as a man navigates the social and personal expectations attached to that identity. To me, masculinity is the social script, what the world expects from us, while being a man is the personal journey of choosing how we move through those expectations. Both concepts assume that certain traits belong to men and others belong to women. Stereotypically, they suggest that strength, toughness, protection, and leadership are male traits, while softness, emotion, and empathy are feminine. But when you really analyze those boxes, they fall apart. The traits people claim make you a man are actually just human traits. Women and non-binary people live them too. And I'm not saying those traits are bad. Many of the qualities we label as masculine are great traits: strength, courage, resilience, problem solving. The issue isn't the traits. The issue is the myth that men are the only ones who carry them. On the other hand, qualities like communication, empathy, emotional awareness, and care are often labeled as feminine. But those aren't gender traits as well. They are human strengths, and a healthy man should have access to the full range of human qualities. As I grew up, my understanding of manhood came from what I saw around me. I saw a woman who naturally expressed traits society labeled as masculine: strength, logic, leadership, and they did it effortlessly. I saw men who were nurturing, compassionate, emotionally intelligent, and they did that naturally too. And I saw negative examples, men who believed they had the right to dominate women simply because they were men, even when they had no wisdom, character, or integrity to justify authority. I saw brilliant women shrink themselves, taught to believe that even an unqualified man should lead simply because he was male. And all of this taught me something important. You can embrace the good within masculinity without pretending those traits belong only to men. You can reject the harmful parts of gender expectations without losing your identity. And you can absolutely embrace qualities society calls soft or feminine, things like communication, vulnerability, tenderness, patience, because those qualities don't weaken you. They make you whole. To me, that's what it means to be a holistic man, someone who isn't trapped by stereotypes. A man who is grounded, self-aware, and secure. A man who doesn't feel threatened by the greatness of others. A man who doesn't need to control anyone to feel strong. Someone who can be fully human while still identifying as a man. Besides the challenge of defining being a man, sometimes there is an insecurity that the title can be taken away from you by not being aggressive enough, by making mistakes. But those don't take away your manhood. For instance, doing something reckless doesn't make you a boy again. It makes you an immature man. Hurting people through selfishness or control doesn't make you less of a man. It exposes your character. If you behave cruelty, abusively, or arrogantly, being a man isn't the problem. You are. Gender isn't what makes someone harmful. Character is. Giving into institutionalized patriarchal systems is. Do not let others lead you into doing something stupid to prove your manhood. Society may hand us labels, boxes, and expectations, but at the end of the day, we get to decide how we move. Because what it means to be a man isn't a one-size-fits-all experience. Manhood is shaped not just by gender, but by race, culture, class, sexuality, geography, family dynamics, and life experience. So don't let anyone else define it for you. Don't let people pressure you into violence, recklessness, or prison just to prove you are a man. Don't let anyone convince you that being a man means staying silent about your pain, refusing help, or walking through life emotionally alone. Being a man doesn't mean being limited. You are allowed to be whole. You can be you. And you can still value traits like strength, courage, resilience, logic. Just know they don't only belong to men. Right now, there seems to be a crisis of purpose for many young men. But don't blame it on improvements for women and trans people. When society has been designed to give you an unfair advantage, equality can feel like a demotion, but it isn't. It's growth, it's maturity, It's justice. It's freeing. You don't have to be everything. Don't demand that women shrink themselves just so you can feel tall. Don't cling to power you didn't earn. Don't let anyone convince you that cruelty, emotional numbness, or domination are what define manhood. They don't. It's time to update our purpose. When we update what it means to be a man, we get filled with purpose again. We get filled with promise again. We get to take the time to develop without the pressure of having all of the answers as soon as we are adults. It is time to be builders instead of barriers. Let's become leaders in dismantling systems built on chauvinism and inequality, not just for others, but to free ourselves from the burdens of outdated expectations. Because when we become part of the solution, we don't lose manhood, we gain our humanity. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rory Smith. And today I was asked to reflect on what it means to be a husband. While I do not have much experience speaking to groups of people, specifically in front of all the wonderful people of Paradox, I'm happy to step out of my comfort zone to expound on something that I care so deeply about. As many of you know, Pastor Craig married me and my beautiful wife, Haley, just last year. While I do not consider myself a marriage expert by any means, I do believe I hold a good perspective of being in a fresh marriage with all the firsts, new experiences, and challenges that come with it. Through my experience, I've learned that there are many competing ideas about manhood. Some say it's about power, success, or toughness, but as I've grown, especially in the way that I love, I've come to believe something very different. Being a man in the context of a relationship isn't about dominance. For me, it's about servanthood. It's not about how loud my voice is, but how deeply I listen. It's not about being the strongest in the room, but being willing to carry not just my own burdens, but help carry Haley's as well. The love I have experienced from my relationship with God is not passive or surface level. It is a self-sacrificing and radical love. Sometimes confusing and overwhelming, but ultimately a beautiful illustration of what I strive to be for my wife. Being a man in my romantic relationship means taking responsibility not just for my actions, but for the emotional and spiritual health of my partner. I pride myself on creating a safe place where Haley is free to be fully known, fully loved, and never judged for her vulnerabilities. As challenging as it may be, I try not to run from hard conversations. When things get messy, I lean in and take it as an opportunity to blanket Haley with love and understanding rather than letting my pride get the best of me. Marriage is not just a contract, it's a covenant. Anyone can sign a piece of paper, but the real work comes in showing up, especially during the hardest of seasons. In my vows, I wrote, "Marriage is famously known for being hard, so I vow to be a husband who is intentionally there for you in any way you need me." I made a commitment that requires choosing Haley every single day, even when we fall short. Being a husband means being a true caretaker of our heart. It means guarding our marriage from anything that would divide it, whether that's ego, temptation, or complacency. Being gentle when the world around us is too loud, choosing peace over being right, and grace over self-defense. Being a husband also means building a home filled with love, a place where forgiveness comes easy, where laughter is the best medicine, and where prayer is part of our rhythm, and always where love leads. And yes, as a husband, you must be strong. Strong enough to admit when you're wrong, strong enough to ask for help, strong enough to apologize first, because my strength as a husband is not measured by how much I can control, but by how deeply and intentionally I can love. Love is patient, love is kind. We all know these words, but as a husband, these can't just be melodic verses. They must become a daily practice. It means being patient even when you're frustrated, kind even when you're stressed. And it means bearing all things, believing all things, and enduring all things. Not because it's always easy, but because God's love enables us to love well. So what does it mean to be a husband? In the amazing, eye-opening, beautiful, and sometimes stressful year, I've learned that being a husband means loving fiercely, leading humbly, forgiving quickly, and being the kind of man who creates peace, a man who shows up not to be served, but to serve. It means choosing covenant over convenience, growth over comfort, and faithfulness over pride. Because at the end of the day, the measure of a man, and especially of a husband, isn't in how high he stands, but how deeply he loves. Thank you.
Good morning, Paradox. Thank you, Pastor Craig, for asking me to speak on today on what I think it means to be a man. And of course, so it's public, you are forgiven on categorizing and assuming my gender. For any of you who may not know, I prefer they, them pronouns, but I do also use he, him. I don't correct it most of the time, if at all. Honestly, Craig, I would have been more offended if you hadn't have asked me. I think the last time I admitted to being a man at Paradox, we were still sharing a space with the Mission Church. And that's when I talked about my coworker feeding me, and food being the quickest way to a man's heart. Also, one final thing, Craig, thank you for texting before you called. I am notoriously bad at answering calls. If you don't believe me, you can ask Jesus. I got my bachelor's degree in accounting before I went to seminary. If you try to tell me to do something, anything, then I must be something or act in certain ways, I will not do it, and I will not become it. So what does this have to do with my views on being a man? Well, I don't consider a question of biology, of binaries, or strict categorizations, but it's a question of formation, of soul, and of self-discovery. To parallel it with another love of mine, besides food, it's the difference between being fashionable and being stylish. To be fashionable is to chase and buy into the trend, to wear what is popular, to say what you feel is safe, and to move how and where the powerful crowd moves. It's following the gospel of acceptability, the hope that if we blend in, we will be loved. If we follow predetermined rules, we will be okay. And if there are many rules to fashion, the seasons will change, and it tells you what and who you should be, not because it knows your soul, but because it just wants you to fit. Society, through fashion and through scripture, can push us into individualism, a theology of self-interest this way. Perhaps because I'm queer, I'm opposed to it. It feels like a bondage, like a box, like they tell you this is how you should be happy. But I prefer being stylish more, to look at something odd, like it's the most beautiful thing in the world, or the most curious thing with no answers. To be stylish is akin to being more of an individual. To be stylish is to give something your soul, to give something conviction, to accept criticism, good or bad, and still choose to build, especially when you are the one building it and you are your own critic. It's taking that discount jacket off the rack and saying, I will rock it. Style listens to the spirit, not the trend of the world. I follow my own path, a gospel of style. So I ask, what is the point of being made a free creature of God, being made in their infinite image, if I can't explore that image? Because for someone else, that image is black and white. Growing up, and even now, I've seen that in the pursuit to be a man, we are told to give up something of ourselves, give up compassion, something that makes us human and individual. Here's my truth to being a good man. We cannot abandon these parts of ourselves. We must pay respects to grace and virtue that saves these aspects when the world calls parts of ourselves weaknesses or that it goes against it. My personal experience, my relationship to God, is between me and God. I'll seek your counsel, but it's my journey and my wisdom to seek. I swear I'm answering the call now, and that's part of the man that I am. But still, I know that I'm not doing this alone, and I wouldn't want to, not when I know I have community behind me. A man, a stylish man, a good man is an individual who doesn't conform out of conformity's sake, but he listens to the spirit of discernment, not the algorithm. He reads the word of Scripture and reads the empty space between those words and takes it with a grain of salt and with grace. He walks humbly, but with confidence, and that's what it means to be the man that I am.
Good morning. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share an original spoken word poem titled Be a Man. I grew up learning that men don't cry, that pain should be swallowed whole, hidden deep, held down, and that tears are for the weak, and I would not be weak. I remember second and third grade in Taiwan, lining up for immunizations. The thought of a needle, my heart pounded. A silver sword skewering my small arm scared me. And the boy in front of me let his fear show. And the mockers descended like vultures hungry for flesh. Are you really a boy? Shame, shame. And a part of me, the tender part, went silent. I didn't grow up with my father. I pieced together masculinity from TV shows, schools, and sermons, and the sideways advice of boys as lost as I was. And so I clung to the script. Be a man. Don't cry. Don't feel. Carry the weight alone. I disappeared into the pool of narcissists, lost in my reflection, starved for connection. This loneliness is the prize of the stoic enterprise. In high school and college, I wore the mask so well, I didn't know how to say, I need. In distress, I floated outside of my body, fake, hollow, numb. Loneliness wasn't around me, it was in me. And while despair grew, I mocked, I blamed, trampling despair to soothe my own. I turned fear into fuel, mistook power for purpose, and solidarity, I traded it for superiority. And then the mask began to crumble, the one that I mistook for strength. And I remembered that the word became flesh. Not a king, not a warrior, a baby. Soft, helpless, dependent. God chose vulnerability over might. God chose amity over armor, presence over performance. And in God's holy surrender, I began to feel, to speak, to name the ache. And in so doing, I discovered who I was and what I needed. Once I saw myself clearly, I saw others too. Lonely, unseen, unheard. And in that recognition, something sacred stirred. I could stand with them and they could stand with me. So maybe be a man has nothing to do with being hard. Maybe it means letting the sun of another's need soften our hardened hearts until compassion spills out. Maybe be a man means lifting the chisel of light to chip away at the gates of oppression until the silence can sing again, until those crushed by the weight of the world can rise and freely breathe. Maybe be a man means knowing that we were never meant to do this alone, that we become whole only when we hold one another close. Until mercy blooms in open arms, until peace becomes the air we breathe, until justice rolls, unending, unstoppable, like a stream. May it be so.
Good morning, Paradox. My name is Chris, and I was asked to share a little bit about what it means to have emotions as a man. I'm sure we're all aware of the pervasive societal norms of men being either forbidden or unable to be vulnerable with their feelings. When I reflect on how prevalent this issue is of men suppressing their emotions, I realize how lucky I've been in this department throughout my life. I'm lucky to grow up in a generation of men that encourages vulnerability more than any other generation has. I'm lucky to have a wife that celebrates me for my emotional side whenever I share it. Shout out Anna. I'm lucky enough to have a dad that cried at my graduation and told me how proud he was of me. However, even with all these sources of support behind me, I still have trouble expressing myself when I am sad, anxious, or even happy sometimes. That's how real this issue still is. Even when men grow up in some of the best possible circumstances, encouraged to be open and vulnerable, societal norms still hold us back. For me, getting to speak about this topic couldn't have come at a better time. In the past 2 months, I've experienced some of the worst anxiety I've had in my entire life. I'm a medical student currently working in the hospital, and seemingly out of nowhere, the stress of balancing studying and working has come to a tipping point. I've had days recently where I get episodes of anxiety in which I feel like I can't think, my heart starts racing, I feel nauseous, and I get the sense I just need to escape. I find somewhere to get away from people for however long I can, and try to just breathe and let my body calm down. The worst part is I still have no idea why this is happening. I was doing well in school, enjoying my time outside of it, and it all felt like it came crashing down on me at once. Another annoying part of this is I still feel like I don't have any solution to it. When I was thinking about what to talk about during my portion here, I was seriously debating not talking about what has been going on recently, because I didn't have anything to bring to you that was a practical piece of advice about how you handle anxiety or other difficult feelings. The more I thought about it, and the more I talked to my wife, I realized how nonsensical that sounded. I was seriously debating not being vulnerable about my emotions in my discussion on emotional vulnerability because I didn't want to come off like I didn't have everything figured out. I'm here to say that's crazy, and that's exactly the type of thinking we need to get away from as men. Thank you. I believe that true vulnerability lies in being able to express your suffering before that suffering has resolved. There's value in simply vocalizing how you feel, not only for the relief of the often burdensome emotions we carry, but also to give others the opportunity to do the same. Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another." Throughout my life, I have frequently heard this verse interpreted to mean men need to be strong and tough with each other in order to be the best versions of themselves. I feel as though this may not be the best explanation for this passage. The author of Proverbs likely knew many other materials that were like harder and tougher, like diamond and obsidian. Anyone who's played Minecraft knows this too. What makes iron special is that when it is melted down, it's the same iron that it will be when it is cooled and fully formed. I think what the author is truly getting at here is that whether you are at your strongest or at your most vulnerable, you are still the same man you always were. If I can encourage all men here in one way today, it would be to take every opportunity to be vulnerable with your emotions. It will give you the opportunity to feel more seen in who you truly are, and maybe a much needed invitation for the men around you to do the same. Thank you.
So I'm Jordan, if we haven't met. I have 2 boys. Griffin is 3, and Rory is 11 months. And if I were to describe them, Griffin, he is a tender heart. He lives in the highs and the lows, as many toddlers do. He is a lover of trains, his cousins, and he loves the drums, which you'll maybe see in a little bit. Rory is even-keeled, a happy face after a nap. He is playful. He is now an explorer on his knees, and he loves to bounce to music. Maddie and I often reflect on our life, our family, as you should do when you have a family. Maddie wanted to have girls and instead has a family of boys. Maddie envisioned a life similar to Gilmore Girls, and she didn't get it. The long-winded dialogue between mother and daughter, it's not in the cards. So she watches the show every year by herself. And then she nicknamed our boy Rory, which, if you don't know, is the name of the daughter in the show. And She literally had a Gilmore Girls trivia party last night. Wow. But there is no looking back, Maddie. We got 2 boys. So thinking now, what do we want our boys to be? How do we get them there? And is there a Gilmore Girls experience to be had with our boys? And finally, what is a healthy man? I feel like we're kind of dancing around it here, but who is it? All right, who is it? It is Dave Nelson. If you don't know who that is, yep, he has amazing hair and the whole thing, okay? It's Dave Nelson, all right? Craig was close. He was in 10th place. So we're currently enjoying kind of a fun temporary setup at home. We have some friends staying with us, and they have a daughter, Lainey, who is staying there in our pool house. Lainey is 3, just like Griffin, and they are best friends. It's been fun watching them over the months and seeing how they kind of learn to live life. There's something that's kind of stood out to me is right now, their life is pretty much the same. They eat oatmeal most mornings, they ride bikes, they play drums, they paint their nails, they comb Maddie's hair, they play in the mud. The only obvious difference is Griffin pees on my tomato plants. And Lainey would like to, but she can't figure out how to pee standing up. But thinking about Lainey and Griffin, why do things so often change? You have a boy and a girl in this innocent, free world, and then somehow it gets cluttered. Gender expectations, social norms, we've kind of highlighted a little bit. And eventually they often enter into more of a binary system that we know so well. Anybody played Wavelength before? Yeah, a great game. But kind of with that theme of you have masculine and feminine, we've already kind of talked about. Some people will say hard qualities and soft qualities. In today's world, you're kind of supposed to land at a specific point on your side of the spectrum. That's kind of the standard. So it's Pink Pony Club, it's fires on the other side, it's tea parties, and it's a man in the wilderness. But that's kind of the modern day spectrum, right? So social experiment, church. Where does Jordan Kattenhorn fall on this graph here? Any ideas? Of course, right there. Okay? Obviously. Well, we got a bunch of teddy bears out here. We know where you'd fall on the curve, okay? But here are Griffin and Lainey. They're simply kind of roaming around in the full spectrum of humanity, no care in the world where they land, no expectations, thriving, they're best friends. Although we have made significant progress, it feels there is kind of this resurgence of this goal for kind of a clear separation of the masculine and feminine, especially for young people. Some current male influencers think that young men are lost these days because their masculinity is being suppressed. While research seems to show that boys are lost and lonely when their culture emphasizes the hard traits and suppresses the soft traits. It's kind of been mentioned. So what does research say for parents? How do we kind of fight the norms? I admit some of this is kind of out of my scope, but kind of stumbled upon a few points I think are helpful for me. So the first one here, it is important to remember that men and women are very similar. Or you could say all humans in general are very similar. That it's not like this massive testosterone takeover and all of a sudden we're so different. So in general, like this basic concept that we are all very, very similar. So there's, and this might seem obvious, but it definitely, has not always been the thought. Many of you might remember the famous book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That was truly the feeling for a long time. But this big study in 2005 kind of showed men and women are most alike for, again, most traits here. So God designed us to be very similar. And the article highlights how believing there are significant differences creates many consequences, primarily for women, as we kind of know, but also for men, as parents in the workforce, kids in schools, etc. And then the other big point that's kind of been highlighted too by others is that these stereotypes exaggerate these differences, making it kind of seem, again, like there's this binary system. So little differences, maybe, but again, they're just exaggerated. So Barbie and Ken is a good old example, but kind of more recent studies. People still perceive strong differences between men and women on stereotype components today as they did in the past. And something that's kind of pertinent to a lot of the fathers in the room is that the fathers, more than mothers, encourage the gender norms, and again, kind of creating this binary system. So fathers who strictly follow traditional masculine rules, boys don't play with dolls, things like that, tend to have sons who do the same as expected. And then kind of the big, where am I? There we are. Kind of the big point overall is that boys do better in an environment free of gender norm expectations. There's a researcher, Niobe Wei. She studied boys over many, many years from China and the US. She's written a lot of books. She talks about the boy culture and its impact. When boys are in boy culture, where the hard qualities are emphasized over the soft qualities, it leads to loneliness and poor relationships. Conversely, if boys express the full spectrum of humanity, they have improved social connectedness, are more vulnerable, have improved mental health, just to name a few. So the goal is not to land on some point on the spectrum, but to be kind of fluid across the spectrum. So what does this mean for my boys, me as their father, and what does this potentially mean for the Gilmore Girl experience? I think at the end of the day, I need to celebrate my boys as individuals, not necessarily who they are as men, but who they are as human beings. And I hope I can foster an environment that gives freedom for them to express the fullness of humanity. And finally, I feel so lucky that my boys get to grow up around all the amazing men in this community who truly practice this full spectrum of humanity. I wish I could just put up a bunch of photos of everybody, but so many of you guys are kind, empathetic, respectful, gentle, driven, loyal, and leaders. And I'm excited to see how this life unfolds for my boys. And if we do it all correctly, then maybe, just maybe, Maddie will have her Gilmore boy experience.